Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading. Thanks for tuning into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash, where we take a look at some of the changing dynamics in the financial markets and in the economy. And unfortunately, a lot of the changing that's been taking place over the last several years, in particular, has been somewhat consequential or detrimental to most of our pocketbooks. And I have with me my co-host Chris Agelastos here today to help talk about this with us. And Chris, how are you? Good morning. Top of the morning.
Yeah, good morning, and yeah, doing well. I wish my wallet was doing a little bit better, but we'll we'll talk about all these issues going on.
Well, that's no joke. And when you say your wallet's not doing well, and I'm not anybody who's even listening to this podcast knows that you know your wallet, even if you have the same job, the same house, the same car, maybe car payments, sending your kids to the
Hmm.
same school, you're buying the same groceries, all these various things, even if all of that is status quo, you're not able to do that now to the same extent that you could have a year ago, 2 years ago, et cetera. And the reason being
Yeah,
is because you know prices are increasing, the value of the dollar is dropping, the purchasing power of that dollar is dropping, and it really is taking a very serious toll on the average American household out there. No one is left unaffected by it. Some people
right.
may not have as much discretionary monies to absorb. Some people may have more discretionary monies to absorb it better than others, but at the end of the day, this is a real problem, and it unfortunately seems like it's going to get worse before it gets better. So
Yeah,
that said, our first article, "The Economic Collapse," is the publication. Americans are getting behind on their debts at a frightening pace, and that's very simply put and very accurately put. And
yep.
the article starts off here, Chris. U.S. households are now $18.79 trillion in debt. In 1980, US households were just $1.4 trillion in debt. So, over the last several decades, we have seen, and they call it in here a household debt binge, unlike anything we've ever witnessed in our entire history.
Hmm.
And I would say that's true, but I think binge almost has, to me, anyways, a connotation that people are irresponsibly out there just buying things very whimsically speaking, if you will, getting the new iPhone, getting the new this, getting the new
Yeah,
that, getting that new car just to get a new car. And we have seen that quite a bit in the history of our country, especially during some of the really gross expansion we saw, arguably starting in the late 90s on through the early 2000s. But I think what's really important to take note of here is that this isn't what, again, like that word binge type purchasing per se. I mean, we have people who their debt is increasing because they can't afford to buy their groceries any longer. They can't afford to, they're struggling to make ends meet in terms of making a house payment, perhaps.
yeah,
And, again, energy costs, fuel costs, everything has gone up. And it's really something that when you hear these numbers, again, that expansion from 1980 of 1.4 trillion to now 18.79, just like our national debt. And see, here's what's really key about that. Like a government, they just have the ability, like they reach their debt limit and then some. And in effect, they just get another line of credit to cover all
yeah.
their other lines of credit. The average American household out there can't do that. And so
Right.
when you start looking at these kind of numbers, they don't have that safety valve or that release valve that the federal government does to try and fix this. And so, that it's definitely something of concern. And the concern being, these are going to be real households and real families that are going to be, financially speaking, destitute, if you will.
Right. Well, yeah, and if you look at just a couple of basic things, wages are stagnant for most people. I mean, obviously there are some industries and maybe some people moving up and doing well in their specific niche, but overall wages are stagnant. So interest rates are higher. People are having a harder time affording mortgages. Inflation is high overall. So rents are high, food is high. You mentioned gas, electric, right? All of the things that we need, healthcare. insurance rates. I mean, it seems like everything, right? I mean, I can't think of any of my bills that I rip open that are lower now than they were a few years ago.
Right.
And not only, I was kind of used to for a lot of years, like my health insurance. Okay, I know it's going to go up $40 a year. Now we're seeing things where it's going up $400, not $40. No, I'm sorry, not $40 a year, $40 a month, right? My payment. Now, hundreds of dollars a month more for the same coverages or even worse coverages. People are having to raise deductibles on their auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and health insurance just to be able to afford the increased premiums. So this is not a case of people just willy nilly going out there and wasting money. It's the fact that their incomes aren't growing anywhere near the rate of all of their expenses. So they're having to rely more heavily on debt just to cover the everyday bills. This isn't to, take the kids to Disneyland. This is to pay the everyday bills to run a household. And so as those credit card balances and loan balances are climbing to record highs, people are getting caught in the trap, and they're not able to pay everything. And so a lot of that financial stress is coming down hard on them. And not only just, lower income folks, again, even higher income people who 5 years ago, you would have said, hey, this is a great job. I'm making a good income. Well, you were back then when costs were lower, but now as costs have gone up, even higher income folks are being affected. So this is hitting a huge portion of our country, not just a little sliver here or there. And really, the big message here, or the big warning, is that all of these debt problems continuing to build could really weaken our entire economy. It's going to hurt consumer spending even more. That can hurt banks and lenders. We could see more bank failures like we saw a few years ago, just a couple of years after COVID, and overall just contribute to a big economic downturn if something doesn't change.
Right. Well, and it's like we're talking. They mentioned in here how we've seen an 18% year over year increase in foreclosures that are taking
Hmm.
place. They really hit hard on how men are kind of a shrinking factor in the workforce. Um, Across the whole demographic, the people that I think they refer to it as in their prime, or even those that are among the older workers, and the dynamic is really shifting quite a bit, and it almost sounds in a way the way this author anyways is describing it, Chris, is like we're getting into kind of uncharted waters because there's just so many shrinking dynamics and changing dynamics that are involved here, that and again happening at a time where you've got government debt closer to 40 trillion now than not. You've got
Hmm.
the average consumer debt nearly 20 trillion dollars. I mean, we've got a real serious situation here. Now,
Yep.
to your point of like the specific toll this is taking, this next article from wolfstreet.com, WOLF, wolfstreet.com, food inflation in America by product boils down to a sharp acceleration on the top of already very high prices. And we're talking ground beef, steak, chicken, fruit, vegetables, coffee, dairy, eggs, and
Hmm.
other foods. The bottom line is these are not what you would really consider to be discretionary items or discretionary purchases. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess they're discretionary if rather than eating some form of a meat, you switch to macaroni and cheese. But bottom line is these are staple items in the average family's diet and in their household. And certainly we already saw this increase beginning. It was already taking place. Then you start off the beginning of this year and you throw a little bit war over in Iran into the mix.
Hmm.
That only is going to exacerbate, and has already started to exacerbate an already existing problem, an already serious problem.
Yep. Yeah, and when you consider that we saw big increases in food inflation during COVID and towards the tail end of COVID, and we finally got that under control, got it to level off a little bit, and now we're seeing the biggest price increase since that period again. Um, and obviously there's no pandemic, right? So it took a pandemic to cause those prices to shoot up as much as they did. We kind of got it to level off for a little while, and now it's shooting up even more than it did them back then with no pandemic. So and like you pointed out, beef prices and steak, contributed a lot to that, but also coffee prices, 29% increase year over year. I mean, that's huge. Fresh fruit and vegetables. So again, this isn't just affecting people that are ordering ribeyes, right? I mean,
Right.
it's every segment of your grocery cart is seeing an increase. And even fruits and vegetables, 6.5% year over year on average. That can depend obviously on what part of the country you live in, but the one exception they pointed out was egg prices, which have come down, but only because they went off the charts
Sky.
high during the bird flu, right? The avian flu. So that was
Right.
a spike that happened last year in 2025. So I mean, the big takeaway here is that we're already feeling the effects of inflation since COVID the last 5 or 6 years, and now we're being hit even harder, and it's hitting our food prices, right? If it was just vehicle prices, well, maybe we put off buying the new car for a few years, hoping things level out, right? Maybe we rent a little bit longer before trying to purchase a home. But no, this is hitting your grocery cart, and you need food to survive. So to be hit with overall grocery costs growing by about 32% versus 5 years ago, that's a big punch that a lot of families are feeling. Obviously in the pocketbook, and it's draining their savings accounts.
Right. No, you're 100% right. And look, at the end of the day, this is not uplifting, not the most encouraging news out there, but this is the reality of the world and the economy that we're currently living in. And so a person listening right now might be asking himself, well, this all sounds like too much. It's all overwhelming. Nothing I can do about it. There is something they can do about it, something all of us can do about it. And that's where, in part, diversification into the type of where you're keeping your money becomes a key factor. Again, with all these increases in prices, if somebody had even, let's just say, to use a number, $100,000 in a portfolio, and they took 20 grand of that, maybe 30 grand of that 2 years ago, and put that into gold and or silver, just based on where the market is right now, though we've had a short-term pullback in the price of gold, that, let's just say it was 20 grand, that 20 grand today would be worth close to $50,000. And that's how you
Yep.
make up for these shortfalls out there, is you put yourself in something that will give you that diversification and that hedge in an asset class that tends to count, historically speaking, traditionally speaking, over centuries now, tends to counterbalance the inflationary impact of what happens with currencies. So, to learn more
Right.
about this, ladies and gentlemen, you can contact our office, text or call us at 1-800-289-2646, or visit us online at www.swissamerica.com. Contact that number, visit that website, ask for information on gold, get the report, The Secret War on Cash, so you can learn a little more about this. And being in the know on this is not only a good thing right now, it's a very important thing, in my opinion. So, thank you,
Yep.
Chris, and thanks for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, please do so. We'd love to talk to you more in the future, and have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week.
Yep. Take care.